Section 1 of Great Pirate Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tisto. Great Pirate Stories by Various. Edited by Joseph Louis French. Section 1. The Picaroon. The Picaroon. Footnote. From Tom Cringle's Log. By Michael Scott. Quote, "Ours the wild life in tumult, still to range." Unquote. The Corsair. We returned to Cartagena to be at hand should any opportunity occur for Jamaica, and were lounging about one forenoon on the fortifications, looking with sickening hearts out to seaward, when a voice struck up the following negro ditty close to us. Fader was a Coromantee, modder was a Mingo, black pickaninny Bucrawanty, so dem sellamy, Peter by jingo, jiggery jiggery jiggery. "Well sung, Massa Bungo," exclaimed Mr. Splinter. "Where do you hail from, my hearty?" "Hello, Bungo, indeed, free and easy dat, anyhow. Who you yourself, eh?" "Why, Peter," continued the lieutenant, "don't you know me?" "Cannot say dat I do," rejoined the negro very gravely, without lifting his head, as he sat mending his jacket in one of the embrasures near the water gate of the arsenal. "Hab not de honour of your acquaintance, sir." He then resumed his scream, for song it could not be called. "Mammy Sally's daughter lose him shoe in an old canoe dat lay half full of water, and den she knew not what to do. Jiggery jig, confound your jiggery jiggery, sir. But I know you well enough, my man, and you can scarcely have forgotten Lieutenant Splinter of the Torch, one would think." However, it was clear that the poor fellow really had not known us, for the name so startled him that, in his hurry to unlace his legs from under him, as he sat tailor fashion, he fairly capsized out of his perch, and toppled down on his nose, a feature, fortunately, so flattened by the hand of nature, that I question if it could have been rendered more obtuse had he fallen out of the maintop on a timber head, or a marine officer's. "No, yes, him sure enough. And who is de pickaninny officer? Oh, I see, Massa Tom Cringle. Garamighty, gentlemen, where have you dropped from? Where is de old Torch? Many a time have I, Peter Mangrove, pilot to him Britannic Majesty's squadron, taken the old brig in and through amongst the keys at Port Royal." "Aye, and how often did you scour her copper against the coral reefs, Peter?" His Majesty's pilot gave a knowing look, and laid his hand on his breast. "No more of dat, if you love me, massa." "Well, well, it don't signify anyhow, my boy. She will never give you that trouble again. Foundered, all hands lost, Peter, but the two you see before you." "Wery sorry, Massa Splinter, wery sorry. What, the black cook's mate and all? But misfortune can't be helped. Stop till I put up my needle, and I will take a turn with you." Here he drew himself up with a great deal of absurd gravity. "Proper that British officer in distress should assist one another. We shall consult together. How can I serve you?" "Why, Peter, if you could help us to a passage to Port Royal, it would be serving us most essentially. When we used to be lying there, a week seldom passed without one of the squadron arriving from this, but here we have been for more than a month without a single pennant belonging to the station having looked in. Our money is running short, and if we are to hold on in Cartagena for another 6 weeks, we shall not have a shot left in the locker, not a copper to tinkle on a tombstone." The negro looked steadfastly at us, then carefully around. There was no one near. "You see, Massa Splinter, I am desirable to serve you, for one little reason of my own, but beside that it is good for me at present to make some friend with the officer of the squadron, being as how dat I am absent without leave." "Oh, I perceive. A large R against your name in the master attendant's books, eh?" You have hit it, sir, wery close. Besides, I long mosh to return to my poor wife Nancy Cater, that I leave, wagabone that I is, just about to be confined. I could not resist putting in my oar. I saw Nancy just before we sailed, Peter. Fine child, that. Not quite so black as you, though. Oh, massa, said Snowball, grinning, and showing his white teeth, you know I am such a terrible black fellow, and when you are a little out at present, massa, I mean about to be confined in the workhouse for stealing the Admiral's Muscovy ducks, and he laughed loud and long. However, if you will promise that you will stand my friends, I will put you in the way of getting a shove across to the east end of Jamaica, and I will go with you too for company. Thank you, rejoined Mr. Splinter, but how do you mean to manage this? There is no Kingston trader here at present, and you don't mean to make a start of it in an open boat, do you? No, sir, I don't, but in the first place, as you are a gentleman, will you try and get me off when we get to Jamaica? Secondly, will you promise that you will not seek to know more of the vessel you may go in, nor of her crew, than they are willing to tell you, provided you are landed safe? Why, Peter, I scarcely think you would deceive us, for you know I saved your bacon in that awkward affair, when, through drunkenness, you plumped the Torch ashore, so— Forget that, sir, forget that. Never shall poor black pilot forget how you saved him from being seized up when the gratings, boatswain's mates, and all were ready at the gangway. Never shall poor black rascal forget that. Indeed, I do not think you would wittingly betray us into trouble, Peter, and as I guess you mean one of the forced traders, we will venture in her rather than kick about here any longer, and pay a moderate sum for our passage. Then wait here 5 minutes. And so saying, he slipped down through the embrasure into a canoe that lay beneath, and in a trice we saw him jump on board of a long, low, nondescript kind of craft that lay moored within pistol shot of the walls. She was a large, shallow vessel, coppered to the bends, of great breadth of beam, with bright sides like an American, so painted as to give her a clumsy mercantile sheen externally, but there were many things that belied this to a nautical eye. Her copper, for instance, was bright as burnished gold on her very sharp bows and beautiful run, and we could see, from the bastion where we stood, that her decks were flush and level. She had no cannon mounted that were visible, but we distinguished grooves on her well-scrubbed decks, as from the recent traversing of carronade slides, while the bolts and rings in her high and solid bulwarks shone clear and bright in the ardent noontide. There was a tarpaulin stretched over a quantity of rubbish, old sails, old junk, and hen coops, rather ostentatiously piled up forward, which we conjectured might conceal a long gun. She was a very taut-rigged hermaphrodite, or brig forward and schooner aft. Her foremast and bowsprit were immensely strong and heavy, and her mainmast was so long and tapering that the wonder was how the few shrouds and stays about it could support it. It was the handsomest stick we had ever seen. Her upper spars were on the same scale, tapering away through topmast, topgallant-mast, royal and skysail masts, until they were fined away into slender wands. The sails, that were loose to dry, were old and patched, and evidently displayed to cloak the character of the vessel by an ostentatious show of their unserviceable condition. But her rigging was beautifully fitted, every rope lying in the chafe of another being carefully served with hide. There were several large bushy-whiskered fellows lounging about the deck, with their hair gathered into dirty net-bags, like the fishermen of Barcelona. Many had red silk sashes round their waists, through which were stuck their long knives in shark-skin sheaths. Their numbers were not so great as to excite suspicion, but a certain daring, reckless manner would at